She had $47 million in the bank, a penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay, and a secret growing inside her that would change everything. But when Amelia Sterling walked into her home that night, ready to share the happiest news of her life, she found divorce papers waiting on the table instead. Her husband of 5 years didn't just want out. He had already moved his mistress into their building, already emptied their bank accounts, already destroyed her reputation across the entire tech industry. And when she told him about the baby, he looked her in the eyes and asked if it was even his. Within 72 hours, Amelia went from millionaire to homeless, from respected entrepreneur to facing federal charges, from happily married to completely alone. Her husband thought he had won. He thought he had taken everything. He had no idea who he was really dealing with. This is the true story of how one woman lost everything, rebuilt herself from nothing, and brought down the man who betrayed her, using the one weapon he never saw coming: the truth. Stay with me, because what happens next will shock you. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about survival, justice, and discovering that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out who you really are. Let's begin. The champagne glasses were arranged in perfect symmetry on the marble countertop. Amelia Sterling had spent 3 hours preparing dinner, her hand occasionally drifting to her stomach where a secret grew. Barely 6 weeks old, but already changing everything. The penthouse overlooked San Francisco Bay, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting a woman who thought she knew what happiness looked like. She had rehearsed the words 100 times. Damien, we're going to have a baby. Simple, direct, life-changing. The elevator dinged. Her husband stepped out, his $2,000 suit perfectly tailored, his expression carefully blank. Damien Voss had built his real estate empire on reading people, on knowing exactly when to strike. Amelia had fallen in love with that confidence 5 years ago. Tonight, she would learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end. We need to talk, he said, dropping his briefcase with a heavy thud. Amelia's smile faltered. I was hoping we could eat first. I made your favorite. This can't wait. He pulled a manila folder from his briefcase, slid it across the glass coffee table. My lawyers prepared these. The words petition for dissolution of marriage seemed to blur and sharpen simultaneously. Amelia's ears began to ring. I don't understand, she whispered. It's simple. Damien's voice carried the same tone he used during business negotiations, cold and efficient. Our marriage isn't working. We want different things. I'm offering a generous settlement. 6 months of living expenses and your personal belongings. 6 months. The number barely registered. Damien, I gave up my career for you. I invested everything I had into your company. As a silent partner, no paperwork, no proof. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe she had bought him for their 3rd anniversary. My accountants have been very thorough. The room tilted. 3 years ago, when Amelia sold SecureNet, her cybersecurity startup, for $47 million. She had been a rising star in Silicon Valley. Damien had been charming, persuasive. Why do you need your own company when we can build an empire together? She had believed him. She had believed in them. There's someone else, isn't there? He didn't flinch. Isabella Cortez. You've probably seen her. 2 million Instagram followers. She understands my world. The pressure, the ambition. She thrives on it. Amelia felt something crack inside her chest. I'm pregnant. For the first time, genuine emotion crossed his face. Annoyance. Like she had just told him about an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Are you sure it's mine? The question was designed to wound, to create doubt, to shift blame. It worked. Amelia felt the floor drop away beneath her feet. You know it is, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It doesn't matter. We can work out custody arrangements separately. Paternity test, child support, visitation. My lawyers will handle it. The elevator dinged again. Amelia's heart stopped as Isabella Cortez stepped out, looking exactly like her billboard's perfect, polished, predatory. She surveyed the penthouse like she was already measuring for new furniture. Baby, are you almost done? Isabella asked, draping herself over Damien's shoulder. The car's waiting. Almost. Damien turned back to Amelia. I need you out by tomorrow morning. Isabella's moving in this weekend. Amelia looked at the woman she had been an hour ago, naive, hopeful, trusting. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who had just learned the most expensive lesson of her life. "No," she said softly. "Excuse me. I said no. You don't get to dictate the terms of my surrender. Not anymore." Damien laughed, a short, humorless bark. "Don't be dramatic. Amelia, you have nothing. Your name, your home, your accounts. They're all tied to me. Sign the papers." She picked up her phone, her fingers steady despite the storm raging inside her. She had one card left to play, though she had hoped never to use it. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 10 years. "Hi, Mom," Amelia said, her eyes locked on Damien's. "I need a lawyer." Catherine Sterling's law office occupied the 42nd floor of a building Damien had always wanted to acquire, but could never afford. Amelia sat in the reception area, wearing yesterday's clothes, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She had spent the night in her car, parked in a grocery store lot, too proud to check into a hotel with a credit card Damien could track. Her mother emerged from a conference room, 63 years old and sharper than most people half her age. They hadn't spoken since Amelia's wedding day, when Catherine had said, "You're making a mistake. Men like Damien Voss don't marry for love. They acquire." Amelia had accused her mother of being bitter, of projecting her own failed marriage onto Amelia's future. Now, sitting in this expensive office, she realized Catherine had simply been right. "You look terrible," Catherine said, which was as close to sympathy as she ever got. "He took everything. Mom, the money I invested, my shares in the company, even my bank accounts. I signed papers I thought were routine portfolio management. He's been planning this for months." Catherine's expression hardened. "May I see the documents?" Amelia handed over the folder. Catherine read in silence, her face growing darker with each page. "This is sophisticated asset concealment. He's moved everything into offshore structures, shell corporations, irrevocable trusts. It's legal? Barely. But it's been orchestrated by someone who knew exactly what they were doing." "What does that mean?" "It means you're broke. Everything you invested is beyond reach. Everything you owned jointly is now in his name only. And according to these documents, you have no legal claim to any of it." The words should have devastated her. Instead, Amelia felt a strange, cold clarity settle over her. "There has to be something we can do." "There is. We fight. But Amelia, I need to be honest with you. This will be ugly. It will take years. And there's a strong chance you'll lose." "Then I'll lose fighting." Catherine allowed herself a small smile. "That's my daughter." Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia moved into Catherine's guest room and began rebuilding her life from scratch. She reached out to her old contacts in the tech industry, hoping to find consulting work. The responses were chilling. Awkward excuses, suddenly full calendars. One former colleague finally admitted the truth. Damien had been spreading rumors for months that Amelia had suffered a mental breakdown, that she was unstable, making wild accusations. He had poisoned the well before she even knew she was thirsty. Then came the breakthrough. Amelia had built secure net around proprietary cybersecurity protocols. When she invested in Damien's company, she had insisted on implementing her security systems across his entire operation. He had agreed, seeing it as free technology worth millions. What he hadn't known was that Amelia had built in a backdoor, an insurance policy she had hoped never to use. It wasn't quite legal, but it gave her access to everything: financial records, emails, communications. She spent 3 nights going through the data, her pregnancy making her exhausted, but her anger keeping her awake. What she found was damning. Damien's company was a house of cards: inflated property values, fake invoices, money laundering through shell corporations. He had been building toward an initial public offering worth hundreds of millions, planning to cash out before the fraud was discovered. "We can go to the SEC with this," Catherine said, reading over the evidence. "It's enough to destroy him." "Do it," Amelia said. "I want to watch his world burn." They contacted a financial journalist at Bloomberg, provided the documents anonymously. The story went viral within hours. Voss Development's golden boy or gilded lie. The company's valuation plummeted 40% overnight. The IPO was postponed indefinitely. Damien's face appeared on every business news channel, looking haggard and defensive. Amelia felt a savage satisfaction. She had struck back. She had hurt him. Then the FBI knocked on Catherine's door. Special Agent Rebecca Chen was apologetic but firm. Ms. Sterling, we need to ask you some questions about your access to Voss Development's computer systems. Amelia's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. We've traced the data breach back to your proprietary security protocols. You violated several federal computer fraud statutes, not to mention civil NDAs you signed when you left the company. Mr. Voss is pressing charges. Catherine stepped forward. My client will not be answering questions without proper legal representation in a formal setting. Of course, Agent Chen handed Amelia a business card. We'll be in touch. After they left, Amelia collapsed onto the couch, her hands shaking. Mom, I'm going to prison. I'm pregnant and I'm going to federal prison. No, you're not. Catherine's voice was still. Damien is using the system against you. He committed fraud worth hundreds of millions. You exposed it using questionable means. They'll try to make you the villain, but we're going to flip the narrative. Over the next 72 hours, Catherine worked her network. She had spent 40 years as a corporate attorney, defending white-collar criminals. Now she would use every trick she had learned to protect her daughter. But Damien was 3 steps ahead. The prosecutor, an ambitious young woman named Jennifer Park, announced charges: computer fraud, corporate espionage, and violation of trade secrets. Maximum penalty 10 years in federal prison. Bail was set at $500,000, money Amelia no longer had. She spent 3 nights in county jail before Catherine managed to secure a bail bondsman. The experience was humbling, terrifying, and clarifying. Amelia shared a cell with a woman named Rosa, who had been caught selling prescription pills to feed her children. Rosa looked at Amelia's expensive maternity clothes and shook her head. Rich people problems, Rosa said. But prison doesn't care if you're rich. You'll do time just like me. The words haunted Amelia as she sat in Catherine's office, reviewing the prosecutor's plea offer. Drop all divorce claims, sign a comprehensive NDA, disappear quietly, and Damien would drop the criminal charges. She would walk away with nothing, but she would stay out of prison. What happens if I fight? Amelia asked. We go to trial. The evidence against you is strong. Computer forensics don't lie. You accessed systems you weren't authorized to access. The fact that you found evidence of his fraud might help us at sentencing, but it doesn't make what you did legal. So he wins. Not necessarily. I have investigators looking into his business dealings. If we can find clean evidence of fraud, evidence that doesn't come from your illegal access, we might be able to leverage that against him. But Amelia, it's a long shot. Amelia looked down at her stomach, now visibly rounded at 4 months. She thought about her daughter growing inside her, about the world she would bring her into. What kind of mother would she be if she gave up now? Keep digging, she said. I'm not signing anything. Catherine smiled grimly. Then we fight. The next week brought a new disaster. Catherine's investigators found something, but it wasn't what they expected. They discovered that Maya Chen, Amelia's best friend since college, and the person who had recommended Catherine as her attorney, had been meeting secretly with Damien's legal team. Catherine confronted Maya in her office, with Amelia watching via video call from a safe location. How long? Catherine demanded. Maya had the decency to look ashamed. 6 months. He approached me right after Amelia sold her company. He knew they would eventually divorce, and he wanted someone close to her who could monitor the situation. I trusted you, Amelia said, her voice breaking. You were my maid of honor. I'm sorry, Amelia, truly, but Damien offered me partnership in his firm and $2 million. You were going to lose anyway. I just chose the winning side. You sold our friendship for money. No, I sold a losing position for a better one. That's what survivors do. The video call ended. Amelia sat in Catherine's guest room, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. Her husband had betrayed her. Her best friend had been a spy. Her career was gone. Her freedom hung by a thread. She was 29 years old, pregnant, and completely powerless. The shelter was not where Amelia had imagined she would spend her 5th month of pregnancy. After the revelation about Maya, Catherine had insisted Amelia go into hiding. Damien's legal team had filed motions to restrict her movements, arguing she was a flight risk. If she stayed at Catherine's apartment, they would know exactly where to find her. So Amelia found herself in a women's shelter in Oakland, sharing a dormitory room with 6 other women, all of whom had their own stories of men who had destroyed their lives. There was Shanice, whose husband had beaten her so badly she lost hearing in one ear. Carmen, whose boyfriend had gotten her addicted to opioids and then left her homeless. Young Brittany, just 19, pregnant with twins and thrown out by her family. Amelia felt like a fraud. These women had faced real violence, real poverty. Her suffering felt abstract by comparison. But at night, lying on a thin mattress while her baby kicked inside her, Amelia understood that betrayal came in many forms. Damien had never hit her, but he had systematically destroyed her life with the same cold calculation. "You look sad, Mama," Brittany said one evening. She was sitting on the floor, painting her toenails bright purple. "Man troubles. Something like that. My daddy used to say, can't keep a good woman down. You just got to figure out who you really are." Underneath all the hurt, the words were simple, almost childlike, but they struck something deep in Amelia. Who was she? Really not Damien's wife, not the successful tech entrepreneur, not even Catherine Sterling's daughter. Those were all roles she had played. Underneath it all, she was a woman who had built something from nothing once before. She had coded her first security protocol in college. She had pitched investors when she was 23. She had sold her company for $47 million by the time she was 26. Damien had taken her money, but he hadn't taken her mind. He hadn't taken her skills. That night, using the shelter's ancient computer in the common room, Amelia began to rebuild. She created a new consulting profile under a pseudonym, offering cybersecurity audits to small businesses. Her rates were low, her reputation non-existent, but she was working again. Her first client was a Vietnamese restaurant worried about credit card fraud. She secured their systems for $800. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her second client was a law firm, then a dentist's office, then a small hedge fund. Word spread slowly. The anonymous consultant who could lock down systems tighter than banks. Within 2 months, Amelia had earned enough to rent a studio apartment in a marginal neighborhood. It wasn't the penthouse, but it was hers. Catherine visited on a Saturday afternoon, looking around the sparse apartment with surprise. "You did this yourself. I'm done being helpless. Mom, even if I go to prison, I want to know I tried." "About that," Catherine set down her briefcase. "I found something. Something that might change everything." She pulled out a folder. Inside were financial records from a venture capital firm called Genesis Partners. Amelia recognized the name. Genesis had been one of Damien's early investors, providing crucial funding for his first major project. "Look at the managing partners," Catherine said. Amelia scanned the list and froze. One name stood out: Isabella Cortez. "She's not just his girlfriend," Catherine explained. "She's been his business partner for 3 years. They've been running deals together, using her influencer status to attract foreign investors, particularly from Dubai and Singapore. Everything she posts on Instagram, it's advertising for his properties. So she knew. She knew he was married when they started the affair. It gets better. Those offshore accounts you found, half of them are in Isabella's name. She's not just complicit in the fraud, she's a co-conspirator." Amelia's mind raced. If we can prove she knew about the fraud, if we can prove she helped hide the money, then she has just as much to lose as Damien. Maybe more. Her entire brand is built on being aspirational, successful, ethical. If this comes out, she's done. For the first time in months, Amelia smiled. "Mom, how do you feel about a sting operation?" Isabella Cortez's Instagram feed was a carefully curated fantasy private jets, designer handbags, champagne brunches overlooking the bay. 2 million followers watched her life and wanted to be her. What they didn't know was that every luxury item was paid for with stolen money, every exotic vacation funded by fraud. Amelia studied Isabella's patterns for 2 weeks. She learned when Isabella went to her favorite coffee shop in Pacific Heights, when she attended yoga classes, when she met with her manager and publicist. Isabella was a creature of habit, which made her predictable. The approach needed to seem accidental. Amelia waited in the coffee shop, wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking nothing like the polished woman Isabella would remember from that terrible night in the penthouse. When Isabella walked in, Amelia made her move. "I'm sorry, I think you dropped this." Amelia held out a designer compact, expensive enough that Isabella would recognize it as her own style. "Oh, that's not mine, but thanks." Isabella barely glanced at her. "You're Isabella Cortez. Right, I follow you on Instagram." That got her attention. Isabella's smile activated like a switch. "That's so sweet. Do you want a selfie?" "Actually, I was hoping we could talk. It's about Damien Voss." The smile froze. "I don't discuss my personal life with fans." "I'm not a fan. I'm someone who can save you from making the biggest mistake of your life." Isabella's eyes narrowed. She gestured to a corner table, away from other customers. "You have 2 minutes." Amelia sat down, her heart pounding. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "My name is Rebecca. I'm a financial analyst. 6 months ago, my firm was approached about investing in Voss Developments before the IPO. We did our due diligence, and we found some concerning discrepancies in the accounting. So, we passed on the investment, but I've been following the news. The IPO postponement, the allegations of fraud, the SEC investigation, and I've noticed something interesting. A lot of the offshore accounts are connected to your name." Isabella's face went pale. "That's ridiculous. Is it Genesis Partners lists you as a managing partner? The Cayman Island accounts have your signature on file. When this all comes crashing down, and it will, the prosecutors are going to need someone to blame. Damien's the obvious choice, but you're going to be right there next to him." "I didn't know about any fraud." Isabella's voice had lost its confident edge. "That's what you'll tell the jury. But juries don't like Instagram influencers who live beyond their means. They'll think you were in on it from the beginning." Isabella stood up abruptly. "This conversation is over." "Wait." Amelia pulled out her phone, showed Isabella a photo. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer. $8.3 million from a Voss Development shell company to an account in Isabella's name. "When did Damien send you this? Was it before or after the Bloomberg article came out? Because the timing matters. If it was after, it looks like he was moving money to hide it from investigators. If you accepted it, you're part of the cover-up." Isabella sat back down slowly. "Who are you really?" "Someone who wants to see justice done. Someone who knows that Damien Voss destroys everyone he touches. He destroyed his wife, and he's going to destroy you too, unless you get ahead of it." "What do you want?" "I want you to tell the truth. I want you to testify about what you know, about the deals you helped him make, about the money you helped him hide. In exchange, I can put you in touch with prosecutors who might be willing to give you immunity. I'd be finished. My career, my brand, everything. You're already finished. This way, you at least stay out of prison." Isabella stared at her coffee for a long moment. "He told me his wife was crazy. He said she was trying to ruin him because she couldn't handle the divorce. His wife was a self-made millionaire who invested her entire fortune in his company. He stole it all and tried to make her disappear." "Oh my God." Isabella put her face in her hands. "I'm such an idiot." "No, you're a survivor, and survivors do what they need to do to get through." The words were Maya's words, thrown back with bitter irony. But they worked. "If I do this, if I testify, I need protection. Damien has dangerous friends, people who've helped him before. I can arrange that, but I need something from you first. I need you to meet with him, wearing a wire. I need him to confess." Isabella looked up, fear clear in her eyes. "He'll kill me." "No, he'll incriminate himself, and then you'll be free." The FBI surveillance van was cramped and smelled like old coffee. Amelia sat next to Special Agent Chen, watching video feeds from 3 different angles. Isabella wore a wire disguised as a necklace, transmitting crystal-clear audio. Catherine stood behind them, arms crossed, her face grim. "If this goes wrong, if he suspects anything, we lose everything." "She'll do fine," Amelia said, with more confidence than she felt. On the screen, Isabella entered the downtown office building where Damien had been working since leaving the penthouse. The IPO was dead. The company was hemorrhaging value, but he still showed up every day, projecting confidence he no longer felt. Isabella took the elevator to the executive floor. The security guard waved her through. She was expected. Damien thought she was coming to discuss their future, to plan their next move now that the heat from the SEC was intensifying. He didn't know he was about to confess to federal crimes on tape. "Hey, baby," Damien's voice came through the speakers. "You look stressed. We need to talk about the SEC investigation. My lawyer says they're asking questions about Genesis Partners. Your lawyer is being paranoid. They have nothing concrete. Damien, they have bank records. They're tracing the money. If they find out I was involved, you weren't involved. You're just a spokesperson. That's what we'll tell them. But the offshore accounts, the ones with my name?" There was a pause. Amelia held her breath. "Those accounts are insurance," Damien said carefully. "Money we can access if things get complicated." "Complicated how?" "Isabella, listen to me. I've been in this business for 15 years. I know how to navigate problems. The SEC investigation will find minor accounting irregularities. We'll pay a fine, and life goes on. That's how this works. But the Bloomberg article said there's evidence of systematic fraud. The Bloomberg article was written by my crazy ex-wife who illegally hacked my systems. That's why she's facing federal charges. She tried to destroy me, and it backfired." "Is she really crazy, or was she just angry?" Damien's voice turned cold. "Why are you asking these questions?" "Because I need to know the truth. Did you defraud investors? Did you inflate property values? Did you launder money through fake corporations?" "Isabella, you're panicking. This isn't helpful. Answer the question." "Damien?" "Fine. Yes. I moved some money around creatively. I exaggerated some valuations. I used shell companies to make my balance sheet look better than it was. That's not fraud. That's strategic financial management. Every developer does it." In the van, Agent Chen leaned forward. "We've got him." But Isabella wasn't done. "What about Amelia? You told me she was unstable, that she couldn't handle your success." "Amelia was a mistake. I married her because she had money I could use. $47 million from her little tech company. I convinced her to invest it all in my business. Promised her we'd build an empire together. She was so desperate to be loved. She believed everything I told her." Amelia felt tears sliding down her face. Hearing him say it out loud, admitting the manipulation with such casual cruelty, was worse than she had imagined. "So you never loved her?" "Love," Damien laughed. "Isabella, sweetheart, people like us don't love. We acquire, we position, we leverage. Amelia was an asset. You're an asset. The difference is you're a much better asset. Your Instagram following is worth more than her little company ever was. And the baby, she was pregnant when you left her. I know, bad timing, but it's handled. My lawyers will make sure she has no claim to anything. The kid will be fine. Amelia will remarry. Some middle-class nobody who thinks she's a catch. Problem solved." Isabella's voice shook. "You're a monster. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Look, Isabella, we can have a good life together. The SEC thing will blow over. In a year, we'll be planning our wedding. In 2 years, we'll have our own kids. This is just turbulence. I can't do this. I can't be with someone who sees people as assets. I thought you were different. I thought we were building something real. We are building something real. We're building wealth, power, influence. That's more real than love." Isabella stood up. On the video feed, Amelia could see her shaking. "I'm leaving." "Fine. Go. But remember, you're in this just as deep as I am. If I go down, you go down. Think about that before you do something stupid." Isabella left the office. She made it to the elevator before she started crying. In the van, Agent Chen picked up her radio. "All units, we have probable cause. Move in now." Amelia watched on the screen as FBI agents swarmed the building. Damien Voss was arrested at his desk, his face showing genuine shock for the first time since she had known him. Catherine squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "It's over." "No," Amelia said quietly. "It's just beginning." The trial took 8 months. Amelia gave birth to Clara Rose Sterling on a Tuesday in March, with Catherine holding her hand and Isabella sending flowers to the hospital. The card read, "I'm sorry. Thank you for saving me." It was a strange friendship, born from shared trauma. Isabella had lost everything. Her Instagram followers had dropped from 2 million to 300,000. Her sponsorships evaporated. Her face, once on billboards across the city, was now associated with fraud and scandal. But she was free. The prosecutors had given her immunity in exchange for her testimony. She had stood in court and told the truth about Damien's schemes, about her own complicity, about the way he had manipulated both of them. Damien's defense was predictable. He blamed Amelia, claimed she had orchestrated the entire fraud and framed him. He blamed Isabella, said she had seduced him and corrupted his business practices. He blamed his accountants, his lawyers, market forces beyond his control. The jury deliberated for 3 days. They found him guilty on 17 counts: securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who reminded Amelia of Catherine, showed no mercy. "Mr. Voss, you portrayed yourself as a self-made success story. In reality, you built your empire on lies, theft, and the betrayal of people who trusted you. You stole from your wife, you defrauded your investors, and you showed not a shred of remorse. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to your victims, beginning with the $47 million you stole from Amelia Sterling." Amelia sat in the courtroom, Clara sleeping in her arms, and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. She had won, but the victory felt hollow. She had her daughter, her mother, and her freedom. But she had lost years of her life to a man who had seen her as nothing more than a resource to exploit. After the sentencing, reporters mobbed her on the courthouse steps. Microphones were shoved in her face. Questions came from every direction. "Ms. Sterling, how does it feel to see your ex-husband convicted? Do you regret marrying him? What's next for you?" Catherine stepped forward, her lawyer voice cutting through the chaos. "My client is focused on rebuilding her life and raising her daughter. She hopes this case serves as a warning about financial abuse in relationships. That's all we have to say." They pushed through the crowd to a waiting car. As they drove away, Amelia looked back at the courthouse, at Damien being led away in handcuffs, and she felt the strangest sensation. Not happiness, but closure. "I want to start a new company," she said suddenly. Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Another cybersecurity firm?" "No, something different. Something that helps people like me. Women who've been financially abused, who've lost everything to a partner who exploited them. I want to give them tools to protect themselves, to rebuild. That's a good mission. What will you call it?" Amelia looked down at Clara's sleeping face. "Phoenix Financial, because we rise from the ashes." Over the next year, Amelia poured herself into the new company. Phoenix Financial offered 3 services: financial literacy education for women leaving abusive relationships, pro bono forensic accounting to help trace hidden assets, and secure digital tools to help victims protect their information from controlling partners. The work was hard but meaningful. Every woman she helped felt like a victory, a way of transforming her own trauma into something useful. Isabella became an unlikely ally. She had started a YouTube channel documenting her recovery from the scandal, talking honestly about how she had been manipulated, how she had prioritized fame and money over ethics, and how she was trying to rebuild her life with integrity. Her new audience was smaller but more engaged. Young women dealing with their own mistakes, their own betrayals. Isabella's vulnerability was more compelling than her previous perfection had ever been. "I'm thinking of going back to school," Isabella told Amelia over coffee one afternoon. They met monthly now, an informal support group of 2, maybe studying social work, helping women who've been through what we went through. "That's a good path," Amelia said. "You have empathy now. That's worth more than followers. I'm sorry, for everything, for being part of what he did to you. I know, and I forgive you. You were a victim too, just a different kind." Clara, now 18 months old, babbled happily in her high chair, smearing yogurt across her face. She looked like Amelia but had Damien's dark hair. Sometimes Amelia wondered if her daughter would ask about her father someday, would want to know why he wasn't part of their lives. When that day came, Amelia would tell her the truth, not with bitterness, but with honesty. "Your father was a man who lost sight of what mattered. He chose money over love, power over integrity. I hope you learn from his mistakes." Catherine had softened in grandmotherhood. She spent evenings reading to Clara, teaching her to count, singing old lullabies from her own childhood. The distance between mother and daughter had healed, forged stronger by shared adversity. "I'm proud of you," Catherine said one evening, watching Amelia work on a financial education module for Phoenix Financial. "You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into purpose." "I had a good teacher," Amelia replied. "You taught me that giving up was never an option. I taught you to fight. You taught yourself to build." 2 years after Damien's conviction, Amelia received a letter. The envelope was plain, the handwriting careful. The return address, a federal correctional institution in Northern California. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Dear Amelia, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably tore this letter up without reading it, but I'm writing anyway because I need you to know something. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I'm in prison. I'm sorry because I destroyed something precious and I was too blind to see what I had. I've spent 2 years in here thinking about my life, about the choices I made, about the person I became. The therapist they assigned me says I have narcissistic personality disorder. She says I saw people as objects, as tools to achieve my goals. She's right. I saw you as an asset. Your money, your intelligence, your willingness to believe in me. I used all of it. I threw it away when I thought I found a better option. I was wrong about everything. I know this letter doesn't fix anything. I know you've moved on, built a new life, become the person you were always meant to be. I see the articles about Phoenix Financial. I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. I also know I have a daughter, Clara. I signed away my rights because I thought it was best for her to grow up without a convicted felon for a father. I still think that was the right choice, but I want you to know that I think about her every day. I wonder what she looks like, what she sounds like, whether she'll have your brilliant mind or my stubborn determination. If she ever asks about me, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I hope she learns to be better than I was. Tell her that the worst mistake of my life was losing her mother. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I destroyed." Damien Amelia read the letter 3 times. She felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no softening. The man who wrote this letter was a stranger. The man she had married was a fiction. Both were irrelevant to her life now. She folded the letter carefully and put it in a file labeled Clara for when she's older. Someday, her daughter might want to see this, might want to know that her father had achieved some small measure of self-awareness, even if it came too late to matter. For now, it was simply a piece of paper, evidence of a past that no longer had power over her present. The next morning, Amelia had a meeting with the board of Phoenix Financial. The company had grown beyond her wildest expectations. They had helped over 5,000 women in 2 years, recovered more than $80 million in hidden assets, and partnered with domestic violence shelters across the country. "We have a proposal," said Janet, the CFO Amelia had hired 6 months earlier. "A venture capital firm wants to invest $20 million for a 30% stake. They want to scale us nationally, open offices in 10 major cities." Amelia listened to the pitch. It was tempting. With that kind of funding, they could help tens of thousands of women instead of thousands. They could build technology tools, create educational programs, maybe even influence policy. But she remembered what had happened the last time she trusted someone else's money. The strings that came attached, the loss of control. "Thank you for the offer," Amelia said carefully. "But I think we're going to stay independent for now. Slower growth, but we maintain our mission. No compromises." Janet nodded, understanding. "That's what I hoped you'd say." After the meeting, Amelia walked through the Phoenix Financial offices, looking at the faces of her employees. Some were women she had helped directly, who had found their way back to financial stability and wanted to help others do the same. Some were fresh graduates passionate about social justice. Some were career changers who had discovered a calling. This was her empire, not built on fraud or manipulation, but on purpose and integrity. It would never make her a billionaire. It would never get her on magazine covers or earn her a penthouse overlooking the bay, but it was hers, and it mattered. That evening, she picked up Clara from daycare. Her daughter ran to her with sticky hands and a huge smile, chattering about the butterfly she had seen at recess. "Mama, can we get ice cream?" "Sure, baby." What flavor? Chocolate with sprinkles. They walked hand in hand to the ice cream shop 3 blocks from their modest apartment in Berkeley. It wasn't San Francisco, it wasn't glamorous, but it was real. As Clara demolished her ice cream cone, chocolate smearing across her face, Amelia thought about the question she had been asked on the courthouse steps 2 years ago. Do you regret marrying him at the time? She had let Catherine answer. Now, she had her own response. No, because that marriage taught her what mattered. It taught her the difference between net worth and self-worth. It taught her that the only person she needed to prove herself to was the little girl sitting across from her, happily eating ice cream and talking about butterflies. Mama, you're smiling funny. I'm just happy, baby. Why? Because I'm here with you. That's enough. 5 years after the trial, Amelia received an unexpected call. It was a producer from a major streaming service asking if she would be interested in consulting on a limited series about financial abuse in relationships. We want to tell your story, the producer explained, but also stories like yours. We think it could really resonate with audiences, maybe even save some people from similar situations. Amelia hesitated. Her life had finally achieved equilibrium. Phoenix Financial was thriving but stable. Clara was thriving in first grade. Catherine was healthy and happy. Did she really want to reopen old wounds for public consumption? Can I think about it? Of course. Take your time. That night, Amelia sat with Catherine in her mother's living room, Clara asleep upstairs after a long day of running around the park. What do you think I should do? Catherine considered the question carefully. What do you want the outcome to be? Fame, money, revenge? None of those things? Then what? I want other women to see themselves in my story. I want them to know they can survive. I want them to have hope. Then you have your answer. Amelia called the producer back the next day. I'll do it, but on certain conditions. The story has to be accurate. It has to show the complexity, not just villainize Damien or glorify me. It has to be educational, not just entertainment. And part of the proceeds go to organizations helping survivors of financial abuse. The producer agreed. Over the next year, Amelia worked with writers, shared her story in excruciating detail, relived moments she had tried to forget. It was harder than she expected, but it was also cathartic. The series premiered to critical acclaim. 6 episodes, each one focusing on a different aspect of the abuse: the grooming, the isolation, the financial control, the betrayal, the fight back, the recovery. The reviews were unanimous in praising the show's nuanced approach. It didn't portray Amelia as a helpless victim or a superhero. It showed her as human, flawed, strong, and vulnerable in equal measure. More importantly, it started conversations. Women began sharing their own stories on social media. Support groups formed. Laws were proposed to better protect people from financial abuse in relationships. Phoenix Financial's phone rang off the hook. Women calling for help, wanting guidance, needing to know they weren't alone. One call stood out. It was Isabella. I saw the series, Isabella said. It brought everything back, but it also made me realize how far we've both come. How are you doing? Amelia asked. Good. Actually, I got my master's in social work. I'm working with a nonprofit that helps women leaving abusive relationships. It turns out I'm pretty good at connecting with people who've made mistakes and want to do better. That's wonderful, Isabella. I wanted to ask you something. Would you ever consider speaking at a conference I'm helping organize one about recognizing and escaping financial abuse? We want survivors to share their stories. I think hearing from you directly, not just seeing the TV show, would be powerful. Amelia thought about it. For years, she had kept her head down, focused on her work, avoided the spotlight. But maybe it was time to step forward. Yes, she said, I'll do it. The conference took place 6 months later at a convention center in Los Angeles. Over 3,000 people attended: survivors, advocates, lawyers, therapists, educators. Amelia stood backstage, her heart pounding, wondering what she would say to all these people. Clara was in the audience with Catherine, her daughter now 7 years old and wise beyond her years. Isabella introduced her. This woman lost everything and rebuilt herself into someone stronger. Please welcome Amelia Sterling. Amelia walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She looked out at the sea of faces, saw women crying, saw hope and pain and determination. She began to speak. My name is Amelia Sterling. 7 years ago, I was a successful tech entrepreneur worth $47 million. I fell in love with a man who saw me as an investment opportunity. By the time I realized what was happening, I had lost everything except my dignity and my determination. She told her story. Not the polished TV version, but the raw truth. The nights she spent crying in her car, the humiliation of jail, the terror of facing federal charges while pregnant, the betrayal by her best friend, the slow, painful climb back to solid ground. I'm not here to tell you it's easy, she said. Recovery isn't a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you'll feel like you're right back where you started. That's normal. That's human. She paused, looking directly at the audience. But here's what I want you to know. You are not the sum of what was done to you. You are not defined by someone else's betrayal. You have value that no one can steal, no matter how hard they try. Your intelligence, your resilience, your capacity to love, those belong to you alone. The applause was deafening. Women stood, tears streaming down their faces. Amelia saw her daughter standing too, clapping with her whole body, her face shining with pride. After the speech, Amelia spent 2 hours meeting attendees. Each woman had a story. Each woman had survived something that had tried to destroy her. Each woman was still standing. One woman, probably in her 60s, grabbed Amelia's hand. I stayed with my husband for 40 years while he controlled every penny. I thought I was too old to leave. But I saw your story and I realized it's never too late. I left him 6 months ago. I'm starting over at 63. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Amelia hugged her, both of them crying. Thank you for being brave. That night, lying in her hotel room with Clara curled up beside her, Amelia reflected on the long journey from that penthouse to this moment. She had lost money, time, innocence, and trust. But she had gained something far more valuable, the unshakable knowledge of who she was and what she was capable of. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. You were magnificent today. Your father would have been proud. Amelia smiled. She rarely thought about her father, who had died when she was young. But maybe Catherine was right. Maybe he would have been proud. She was proud of herself. And that, she had learned, was what mattered most. 10 years after the divorce, Amelia stood in the lobby of the Phoenix Financial headquarters in downtown Oakland. The building wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, purchased with profits from a decade of steady ethical work. On the wall was a plaque, in memory of the women who didn't survive, in celebration of the women who did, in hope for the women who will. Clara, now 12 years old and already showing signs of her mother's analytical mind, sat in the corner working on a coding project. She wanted to build an app that would help kids identify unhealthy relationships before they became dangerous. Amelia had never been prouder. The receptionist called out, Amelia, you have a visitor. Says it's personal. Amelia looked up, curious. She wasn't expecting anyone. A man stood in the lobby, thin and gray, wearing clothes that had seen better days. It took her a moment to recognize him. Damien, released early for good behavior after serving 8 years of his sentence. Her first instinct was to call security. Her second was to hear him out. 5 minutes, she said. Conference room 2. They sat across from each other at a plain table. The last time they had been in a room together, he had been arrogant, cruel, dismissive. Now he looked broken, humble, uncertain. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. Why are you here, Damien? I saw your TED Talk, the one about rebuilding after betrayal. I've watched it probably 20 times in the prison library. And I wanted to tell you in person that I'm sorry. I know I said it in a letter years ago, but I needed to say it to your face. I destroyed you because I was too arrogant to see your value. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I thought I deserved more. I was wrong about everything. Amelia studied him. The man before her was genuinely remorseful. She could see that. Prison had stripped away the polished veneer, leaving behind someone who had finally confronted the worst parts of himself. I appreciate you saying that, she said carefully, but I need you to understand something. I forgave you years ago, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger was exhausting. It was stopping me from moving forward. I understand. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I trust you. It doesn't mean we're going to be friends or co-parents or anything else. It just means I've let go of the hold you had on my life. Damien nodded, his eyes wet. I know, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that the man who hurt you is gone. I'm trying to be someone better. Good, the world needs fewer people like who you were and more people willing to do the hard work of change. For what it's worth, I did that work. I got my GED in prison. I'm taking online courses in accounting, learning to do things the right way. When I get out, I want to help other people avoid the mistakes I made. Maybe volunteer at a nonprofit that helps ex-cons reintegrate. That's admirable. I hope you follow through. Can I ask you something? His voice was hesitant. Clara, is she okay? Amelia glanced through the glass wall at her daughter, who was typing furiously on her laptop, completely absorbed in her project. She's more than okay. She's brilliant, kind, and strong. She knows who her father is, biologically. I've never hidden that from her. But she also knows that biology doesn't determine family. Family is the people who show up, who do the work, who love you when it's hard. Would she ever want to meet me? I don't know. That's her decision to make when she's old enough to understand the complexity. If she asks, I won't stop her. But I also won't push her. She has a good life. She's happy. That's what matters. Thank you for giving her what I couldn't. Damien stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. You won, Amelia. Not just in court. You won at life. You became the person you were always meant to be. I hope you know that. After he left, Amelia sat alone in the conference room for a long moment. She thought about the girl who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She thought about the woman who had been crushed and rebuilt herself. She thought about the mother and entrepreneur and survivor she had become. Had she won, maybe? But it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about surviving, learning, growing, and using her experience to help others do the same. Clara poked her head into the conference room. Mom, who was that man? Amelia made a decision in that moment. Clara was old enough to know the truth, or at least part of it. That was your biological father. He wanted to apologize for some mistakes he made a long time ago. Oh, Clara processed this with the straightforward logic of a 12-year-old. Did you accept his apology? I did. Forgiveness is important, even when it's hard. Are we going to see him again? I don't know, baby. Would you want to? Clara thought about it. Maybe someday, but not now. Right now, I'm happy with our family the way it is. Me too, sweetheart. That evening, Amelia attended the annual Phoenix Financial Gala. Over 800 people filled the ballroom. Donors and volunteers and survivors all gathered to celebrate another year of helping women rebuild their lives. Catherine gave a toast. To my daughter, who turned her worst experience into her greatest purpose. You've helped thousands of women find their strength, but more importantly, you've shown them that survival isn't just about getting through trauma. It's about transforming it into meaning. Amelia stood to respond, looking out at all the faces women she had helped directly, women who had been helped by her staff, women who were just beginning their journey. 10 years ago, I thought my life was over, she said. I had lost everything, my money, my home, my sense of self. I was pregnant, alone, and facing federal charges. If someone had told me then that I would be standing here today, I wouldn't have believed them. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But here's what I've learned. We are not the worst thing that happens to us. We are what we do with it. Every woman in this room has faced something that tried to destroy her. And every woman in this room is still standing. That's not weakness. That's not luck. That's strength. The room erupted in applause. Amelia felt Clara squeeze her hand. Later, as they drove home through the Oakland streets, Clara asked the question that had been on her mind all evening. Mom, if you could go back and change what happened, would you? Amelia thought about it honestly. Would she choose to avoid the pain, the betrayal, the loss? Would she choose an easier path? No, she said finally, because all of it, even the worst parts, made me who I am today. It gave me purpose. It taught me what matters. It brought me you, even though it hurt, especially because it hurt. Pain teaches us things that comfort never can. It shows us what we're made of. I want to be like you when I grow up. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Baby, I want you to be better than me. I want you to be the version of yourself that never has to go through what I went through. But if you do face hard things, and you will because everyone does, I hope you remember that you come from a long line of strong women who survived. That strength is in your DNA. They pulled up to their house, a modest two-story in a good neighborhood. Not a penthouse, not a mansion. Just a home filled with love and laughter and the occasional argument about homework. Inside, Catherine was waiting, having left the gala early to make dinner. The three generations of Sterling women sat around the kitchen table, eating pasta and talking about their days. This was the empire Amelia had built. Not towers of steel and glass, but something far more valuable, a family bound by love and resilience. A company that changed lives. A legacy of helping others find their strength. As she tucked Clara into bed that night, her daughter asked one more question. Mom, do you think you'll ever get married again? Maybe someday, if I meet someone who sees me as a partner, not an asset. Someone who celebrates my strength instead of trying to diminish it. Someone worthy of being part of our family. What if you don't? Then I'll be fine. Because I've learned the most important lesson: I don't need someone else to complete me. I'm already whole. Clara smiled and closed her eyes. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. More than anything in this world. Amelia stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her daughter sleep. Then she walked to her home office and opened her laptop. She had work to do. Always more women to help, more lives to change, more hope to offer. The work would never be finished, but that was okay. Some missions weren't meant to be completed. They were meant to be lived, day after day, choice after choice, building something meaningful from the ashes of what was lost. Amelia Sterling had been destroyed once, but she had rebuilt herself into something stronger, something that couldn't be taken away by any betrayal or loss. She had become, finally and completely, herself. And that was the greatest victory of all. Amelia's story proves something powerful: you are never as powerless as someone wants you to believe. Even when everything is stripped away, your intelligence, your resilience, and your determination can't be stolen. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life or someone you care about, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What moment hit you the hardest? Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild? Share your thoughts below.